Today's video, we're going to talk about PMax audience signals. These are massively profitable if you know how to use them the correct way. Almost nobody knows how to use them the correct way, by the way, which is why I wanted to make this video for you. You uploading your customer list and your competitor's customer list, if you will, or indirectly their competitor list, and filtering by demographic and also by in-market and affinity segment type, you can make 2 to 5 times as much from your PMax campaign just adding these simple filters to your account. And I'm going to prove how this works because I'm going to have example markets where we've done this exact thing and go over the results we got in those markets. So stay all the way through the video so you get that key information for yourself so you can see how much this is going to work for your market specifically. But I will give you all the details here that you need to replicate this for yourself as well. So you walk away from the video with something you can actually make money with. I'm going to go through one of the 4 key different categories that I know after running hundreds of PMax campaigns that work the best in terms of signals that you're going to add to your PMax campaign. I'll go through them one by one, starting with the most useful ones and then working my way down the list. Before I dip into this though, I want you to know that PMax campaigns as a whole are complete dog shit for lead generation campaigns. You do not want to use them for that. Why? Because you could run a better lead generation campaign with standalone campaigns, a standalone search, standalone display. You're targeting the exact same people, but you're doing it with all the levers and controls you have. Google sells PMax as this AI, great, wonderful thing, best thing since sliced bread, because they can get you to easily waste your money with it. That's the main purpose of it. I don't care what Google says publicly about this. It's to get more of your money spent on stuff that doesn't work. And they blend it in with everything else, brand traffic, everything, and then it comes out squeaky clean on the other side. It's almost like click laundering. Like money laundering works where you take this illegitimate money, you mix it in with something legitimate, and then it comes out the other side legitimate. Google takes the shit traffic, wraps it in with the stuff that does work, comes out the other side squeaky clean, and you think it works. You're willing to spend your money on it. For e-commerce businesses, typically we're going to run something called a feed-only setup, where you don't add any headlines, images, all that, because that's going to be the way to make the most money with it, because you're just going to run shopping placements then, and the PMax will run shopping placements better than a standard shopping campaign will, because it'll have more machine learning involved in it. Now, that all said, you can make money with PMax for lead generation, particularly if you go the extra mile, which nobody does, and actually qualify your leads, use offline conversion tracking to import leads that are qualified into your PMax campaign so they can see which ones are qualified and let the machine learning algorithm optimize on that data. If you don't do that, you're just wasting your energy and your effort and a ton of money. For e-commerce, you can add other asset groups and make money as well, but I just don't, generally speaking, recommend it. So when you add these audience signals, you're going to do it on this one asset group that you're going to have, which is your feed-only setup. For lead generation campaigns, of course, if you're going to go and be crazy like that, you're going to have different asset groups for different services at least. And you set yourself up for that because your audience signals, you want to have separate signals for each service, given that each service is going to have different customers that you're targeting, and you'll drill in a lot more results for yourself that way. And as a small also side note here, once in a while with e-commerce, if we can't get to anything to work any other way, we'll have different asset groups for every item that we're targeting, all feed only, so that audience signals that we have can be laser targeted to that exact item even. Similar to the lead generation campaigns and targeting each service individually, we're targeting each item individually with our PMax, and that will get you the most results of all. The problem is, of course, it takes a ton of time to do. Do you want to get all the results? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. The results are there for you if you want to use this. Use the information that is I'm giving you here and apply it to an individual item level that you're selling, given that each item that you sell has a different customer base technically. Or at the very least, you put all of your items that are in one category into its own asset group. Let's say if you sell furniture, couches, and then one asset group has, deck chairs and so forth. So your audience signals will be better matched to what you're doing there. That is, somebody who buys a couch is different than someone who buys deck chairs. But I will say, for that matter, you're better off if you are going to do that at the category level for an e-commerce business. I'm going to have different campaigns for each category, because then I can set my budget differently, my targets differently, and go that route with it. But if you are going to target each individual item like that, like I mentioned earlier, do that within the same campaign. Of course, beyond that, you should have different campaigns for each category if you sell completely different things, like a bed and like a car. And then within that, you have different asset groups for every item, for every car that you sell in that car campaign. And then the asset groups are going to be all related to car-related stuff, and you get the most results with that formula overall if you want to put the work in. So with that said, though, getting into the asset or the audience signals here, PMax audience signals that are going to give you the most results out of your PMax. First one is demographic filtering. Almost nobody talks about demographic filtering when it comes to Google Ads, and I don't know why. Frankly, this is the easiest way to make a higher ROI from your campaigns. Your customer base, you have a sweet spot. Everybody has a sweet spot. A certain age, a certain gender, a certain household income that generally pays more. And normally, obviously, the more money they have, the more likely they have money to spend on your product or service. With that said, if you do not know what this is, you need to go and find out what it is, or run a campaign and then look at the Google stats that they give you and see who converts, who don't. If you want to get out ahead of it and you're just starting out, I recommend taking your data to a data company like Axiom, and they'll tell you of your customer list, if you've been in business for a while, and this works better when you have at least 1,000 customers, what is the average demographics of your users? Age, gender, household income. Then in your PMax campaign, you can set up in the audience signals, the signals that match your customer demographic, and it'll cut down on the targeting that they're doing for you way sooner than they would otherwise. These are signals. They're not absolutes. Hey, Google, they're not going to take your request to do male only and only do male. They're going to do mostly male, test a little bit of female, and see if female will convert. It just speeds up the process of the machine learning. That's what is ultimately going on here. To give you some examples of this, we had an Amish furniture company. We found out pretty much all the customers who buy are the top 20% of income demographic. I was able to discover that looking at their old data when I started with this particular client. We've worked with multiple, by the way, Amish furniture companies in the last 20 years. And it's a very profitable niche to be in. Anyway, with that said, that tremendously helped the campaign. We're talking double the ROI, just that one little tweak that nobody really talks about. Income-based audience signals and filtering on search campaigns are a freaking gold mine. You have to be doing this for the most part, because the lower half of America, if you're targeting Americans, they don't have any freaking money at all to spend on anything, basically, because they're all on welfare. They're all on food stamps. Why would you want to market to them? I know this may piss some people off, but it is what it is. You got to have disposable income to buy an item that's not food and water and all this other crap. Income targeting. Then we have age signals. So we can tell Google what age of our user. We had a jewelry seller here. It was a high-end jewelry seller that sells, engagement rings, wedding rings, all this stuff, but it's higher end. Guess what? Higher end people skew to wanting to spend more money because they've had more time to accumulate wealth. You may say, well, with income targeting, isn't that already just taking care of that? No, it won't, because Google doesn't know the income precisely of every user. They know what the income is of the zip code you're in, and that's how they come up with the income. But what they do know more of is the age of the user, because you have to give your age when you sign up for a Google account, and age correlates with income. So it gives you a higher level of precision here. We targeted people that are over 35 because they typically, their customer base, that's what it is. It's not the 22-year-old guy getting married to his high school sweetheart. And that made all the difference in our results there. So where everybody else is going after everybody who wants an engagement ring, we're just going after the part of the market where it really counts the most, if you will. That in itself increased our profitability about 50%, just making that one simple tweak itself. So you can see how powerful this stuff actually is. If you actually take the time to not just speculate, figure out where your customers are, and then making the audience signal that you need, or putting the audience signal that you need in place. Then you got gender targeting to use as an audience signal. We had a pottery equipment seller. They sell to make, pottery wheels, clay, all that stuff for people that are they're hobbyists, as well as people making money doing it as a business. What we found in that space is males are worth significantly more in terms of their lifetime value as a customer to the organization. And this is where people get really screwed up because they optimize for cheap customers. Your cheap customers are probably not most profitable customers you have. If you're in a business like pottery equipment, which typically most of the people buying that aren't buying one time and they're done, right? And if you only focus on just one and done, you're not going to get to be a huge company. What did we do? We mathematically figured out what a male customer is worth versus a female. Then we did two things here. One, we told via our PMax campaigns that we want a male customer via a whole separate campaign so we can scale that up easier. Then secondarily to that, we added a premium to the conversion goal that was tied to that campaign. Because you could have different conversion goals for each campaign. If you don't use account default goals for your campaigns, it's under the campaign settings menu. Under the goals, you can tell the campaign and Google to optimize for whatever you want. And what we did was for every sale that came in on that campaign and for that goal that that campaign specifically uses, we actually added a premium to the conversion. In other words, if we had $5,000 worth of sales through that campaign, what we would do is we'd actually tell Google we got $12,000 in sales for that campaign by adding another $7,000 to the original $5,000, because you can obviously update and correct conversion goals, but you also, in this case, we just added an additional goal for this campaign, an offline conversion goal. We just said, hey, these sales came in offline by this other goal, even though they didn't. Here's what they spent. So effectively, what we were able to do is tell Google these customers are worth more based upon what we know they're really truly worth compared to a female customer that we're targeting with other campaigns, not exclusively, but in general. Later on, by the way, we did set up a female-only campaign to take this to the fullest extent. See, but the point is here, you can segment your customers by gender, find out how much each one's worth, create one PMax for one PMax for the other, supplement your conversion data for one versus the other, and actually end up with a lot more out of Google Ads at the end of the day using PMax than you would otherwise, because Google's going to be able to go a lot further with the one that you're supplementing the extra data with, that ultimately they're worth that. It's going to scale much more than you would otherwise, especially blending it all in together, ultimately. So this isn't so much about just getting rid of a gender. It's about maximizing how much you can make from each gender. So that's a great example. And so, whereas our male customers were worth more than double what our female customers were worth, our male customers were able to scale this over 3 times what we could otherwise in our PMax campaigns, setting up the system that I'm talking about here. So that's another great opportunity for you with your PMax campaigns to maximize what you can get out of them. Now, that's demographic filtering. We got competitor signals now. We had an auto parts brand. We had sold air intakes, turbo kits, exhaust systems to make your car faster, a performance auto brand. This is where I got my start, by the way, online, learning online marketing. A lot of guys, they're consultants. They haven't ran a real business of their own. I'm an e-commerce guy from the very beginning, and I started running Google Ads in 2005 altogether. Everybody who just does what I do for a living should actually force themselves to make a business work. Otherwise, how the hell are you telling somebody else how to make their business work? You've never actually proven in the real world how to do this. What you'll do, just like we did, is we made a list for the air intake campaign that we had that just targeted air intakes. Going back to what I was saying before, we had a single campaign singled out for that. We actually made a list of all the other competitor air intake companies, but not just all of them in general. All the ones that are more generic brands. K&N is the big brand in that air intake space. We didn't put that as our signal because the person who buys that isn't going to be buying an off-brand, in other words, cheap Chinese ones, okay, that aren't branded. And so all the other, there's branded ones, but they're not the leading part of the market. We targeted the people that are looking for more of a cheaper one, not the cheapest, but a cheaper one, and use that as a signal on our campaign so that Google right away would know, okay, if somebody's looking for one of these lower end air intakes that are about the same price as ours, go after them specifically, not the guy looking for the K&N, because we know that's not our customer. And so again, like I said before, what these signals do is it cuts down on the amount of testing that Google has to do with their PMax campaign to find out where your customer is. So instead of it taking several years to get to the perfect place in terms of you're at, who it shows up for, who it doesn't, you can cut that down to 6 months because you gave it the data that you could easily get if you just studied your market, take your customer list to a data broker, like I mentioned, like Accessory, check with your sales team figure out who's buying, who isn't buying, read your reviews, read your competitors' reviews, and just figure all this out for yourself. That's a great example of how to do this. So ultimately, though, going back to what I was saying before, best of the best results, though, are going to come if you create different asset groups for each item that you're selling, assuming you're not selling like, hundreds of thousands of items, you sell 10, you damn well should be taking the time to have different asset groups for each item. So why? Because you could create a custom competitor list of every product that you have. So if they're looking at this item, here's the competitors. We're going to tell Google to optimize for people looking for these products in the past. For this item, here's our competitors. We want to tell Google to optimize for the people that have looked at one of these other products in the past. Those are the items they buy if they don't buy ours. And you do this by item, and you're going to get way great results doing this, taking the time, figuring out the direct competitors, and then ultimately having Google have you show up next to the direct competitors you have. That's the most efficient way of running PMax. I mean, frankly, it's like, let's say you had a lotion brand. You want to sell that lotion. Where would be the best place to sell it? It would be right next to the other lotions in the grocery store. You just want to be right there next to it. Well, with PMax with a feed-only setup, and you got your competitor signals there, that's exactly what's going on. And it doesn't get any more relevant than that, not any more targeted than that, if you actually give that Google that data. Otherwise, they got to figure this out on their own. And you're going to waste a bunch of money in the process. So you're either going to waste time or money. What do you want to, what's more important to you? Do you want to throw 100 grand in ad spend to figure all this stuff out? Or do you want to spend, 20 hours doing this work and then it's done and then you don't have to spend that 100 grand on wasted ad spend? It's really up to you. You also got competitors' customer signals. You upload your customer list, Google's going to use this as a signal. Now, that's the bare minimum way to get some results with your campaigns. That is, just upload your customers. At the very least, you should be uploading customers who have bought once and customers who have bought multiple times. What we call in the marketing space, multi-buyers. Why? Because there's a huge difference in value on one versus the other. And if a person looks like a person who buys more than once, we want Google to optimize for those separately at a higher level. So the more you segment out your customer list, the more Google is going to be able to figure out from your list what to do with it. So you absolutely do that. Also, if you have subscribers, if people subscribe for a discount but they didn't buy yet, you should upload that separately. That's also going to help the system. But beyond that, okay, you want to actually upload separate lists for each category of product you sell. Going back to what I was saying before, having, different campaigns for one for couches, one for deck furniture like that if you sell home furniture. Once you've done that, you can now take the audience signal you can take your customer list of people who bought deck chairs and add that to the deck chair campaign. And then that right away gives it a massive head start on what it's going to need to do for you, having that data just about the deck chairs. Why? Because deck chair people are going to look different. They're going to behave differently. Google's going to know how they've searched in the past, specifically that's unique to them. They're going to know where they go to, because on it with a phone and a Google app on it, they're going to spy on where you look, where you're at geographically, what you say near the phone, and they're going to use that to decide if your ad shows up here or here or here. That is how you get the most results out of customer lists, if you will take the time to actually do it. I'm not going to necessarily spend too much time on the advanced strategies here. I mean, mainly, if you wanted to get real good results, you could get a competitor list. Go to your direct competitors or even indirect competitors and ask them how much you could pay for their customers per name. So you can use it to train the PMax campaign. Because if you actually give it a list of your direct competitors' customers, let's say because they don't even run Google ads, and you pay them $5 a name, and you're willing to give them, 30 grand for their customer list, specifically to license and use it for the PMax training, your PMax results will go through the roof. Why? It's not good for them at all, but when those customers come through, you're going to be able to get them and you're going to show up right away, for one. But secondly, that actually tells you exactly who you need to show up for. And if they have a massive customer list and you don't have it, it's 100% worth it to get that data in there. For that matter, that's another way to use customer lists as an audience signal that I even talked about. But as a small side story, we had a company that sold a product. I'm not going to name the exact product here because I don't want the guy to get pissed off at me. But he actually bought the company from another individual. And then what happened was the other individual who sold the company started up another company doing that same thing. And he took the customer list that he had and was keep using it as an audience signal on that PMax campaign. What did this do? It made sure that the PMax campaign that our client used it didn't work anymore because they were using it on their campaign and they were getting first placement and the better placement because they had access to the data as well. So it took away a lot of the air out of the PMax campaign that they were running because this other PMax campaign was running, and all they had to have was a more liberal target that is willing to pay a little bit more for a customer. Google now shows their ad better, the guy who bought the company. If you sell a company, the data list can be used to train new campaigns that can then compete against you. They had the mindset to do this. We had a garage accessories company that sells ways to products to beautify a garage, floor mats, cabinets, lifts for vehicles, stuff like that. With the customer signals, we actually created separate lists for floor mats, and then the cabinets, one of the bigger category products that they have. And that made a huge difference in the amount of ROI that we were getting from our campaigns. Namely, because our campaign wasn't getting the best ROI, we were getting 300% ROI or ROAS on our campaigns on average between these two. Once we uploaded our past customer list going back to the beginning with a 20-year-old company, the ROI/ROAS in this campaign jumped all the way over and up to a 500% plus ROAS just with that one simple change. Just getting the right customer data into the system. That customer data I can't even express how much of a difference that makes on your campaign. So you absolutely do want to take this step for your company, and it's the easiest one, frankly, out of this one for the most part. And then finally, the default in-market audiences is another way you can do audience signals. If you're in a fringe subsegment of your market, then finding out traits that make your customer unique and then telling Google that your customers have those traits will be an easy way to get more out of your PMax campaigns. To give you an example of this, we sold a mailbox product that's a luxury mailbox. The average person's not going to spend, more than a couple $100, $300 on a mailbox. They're not insane. Our product is well over that. So there's just a small part of our market who we want, and that actually has the capability to buy and wants to buy a product like that. Of course, we can go after the top 10% of income demographic. We do that, and that helps a lot. However, in addition to that, what we found out through the data, Google's own data, because Google gives you these free insights that nobody uses, in-market audience segments and affinity segments itself that tells you what people are also in market for if they buy your product, as well as the traits that make them unique as an individual that go beyond demographics. If that person is planning an interior or exterior renovation of their home, they are astronomically more apt to buy our mailbox than not. Why is that? Well, it's very simple and obvious, even though I don't have proof of this. But hey, when you have a budget for something cut out, then spending more money on something, you're more likely to do it. Just like, when you're on vacation, you're more willing to piss money away, this like water, because you're on vacation, why not? Same thing with weddings. People are willing to spend way more on stuff during a wedding than they would otherwise because they have a budget, and somehow in their mind, they've already okayed this. Once you're renovating, you've got certainly a budget for renovation, 15 grand, 30 grand. What difference does it make spending another $500,000 on a mailbox? We're already spending all this money and it's already been okayed by the spouse, whatever. So that was a great way to add a signal to our account that made all the difference in increasing the profitability of this campaign, where we were getting our ROAS from 200% over 300% once we instituted this particular method. The rest of the signals did not. Insight that I just mentioned there, that in itself raised the ROAS 30% in itself. Also, we had a high-end mattress that we were selling. Okay, what were the insights there that we can figure out through Google's own data that they give us? Which, of course, you can get the same data through Accessory as well. You upload your customer list to them. They'll tell you 40,000 individual unique traits that may or may not match up with your customer base. And then, so specifically to arm yourself to do audience signals. With that mattress company, we found out if somebody was willing to spend a lot of money for a high-end mattress, which is a luxury type mattress, that the person probably had issues with their back. Specifically, they go to a chiropractor. Yeah, and it's nuts because you actually can get this data off of Google as well as we also went to the Accessory as well to get this data as well, by the way, just to supplement what Google has. I recommend you actually pay for that data. If you're spending all this money on ad spend and you don't know these traits that make your customer unique, you're crazy not to figure that out. So what we did is we added that as an audience signal itself. But the great thing about Google's data is there's always default audience. So if in the affinity segments that they give you, they show you somebody's has back pain or should I say, likes to go to a chiropractor there, that audience will be available to you automatically by default in the audience signals part of your account. If you went to Accessory and get the data and you find somebody with foot fungus likes to buy their luxury mattresses for whatever the hell reason, then you could create a custom intent audience and then use that as your audience signal. So this doesn't have to be related to the data that Google has inherently and the audiences they have inherently. You can build your own custom audience. And then you can use that to steer your PMax campaign. Keep that in mind. You're not limited by anything, really, once you find out what makes a customer unique. For that matter, unless you're in a fringe part of the market, like if there's only like 10% of the market that you actually have as your customer, I would just not even worry about this because it's not going to help you that much. But if you're selling to a small segment of your market, this is absolutely a game changer here. Our mattress sales through this PMax campaign in an ultra competitive market. Mattress marketing is very, very hard to do on Google Ads to make a good return on it. This right here made significant difference. We went from a 400% roll res or right around there to over a 500% just by figuring this out and adding this as an audience signal to our account. So, is it going to double your profitability? No, but that right there is a lot of extra profit that you're making per month. Just by figuring out what to add as an audience signal, in-market audiences or affinity segments that you can add to your account. Anyway, for that matter, that's what I was going to mention there as far as the so-called default in-market and affinity audiences, how that can play into audience signals that you add to your PMax campaigns and making you more money. If you want myself to set this up for you, this is what I do for clients at our firm. You can go to my site at guaranteedppc.com and I'll hook you up with an 8-quarter projection of your results using my methods that I've perfected over a decade running this advertising firm for hundreds of clients. If you want to get results, but you don't want to work with our agency, just, for me to do all your campaigns for you, we also have ad templates available. If you are in a market that we've been in already, like one of the ones I mentioned here, you can buy from us the winning ads, landing pages, campaign templates that work for your market, and you copy paste those into your ad account, and then you'll use it and get the same results we did. As long as you're in a different city or country that our client is in, you can use it for yourself. So if you're interested in that, let me know as well. If you have any questions about anything I'm covering here, by the way, you can always leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel. I also get back to everybody who reaches out to me through my Discord group, where we got a lot of guys from this channel talking in there and gals. You can find the link to that in the video description. You also, of course, can set up a private phone conversation with me by reaching out to me through my site. Coach a lot of agencies as well as individual company owners as well. And of course, if you haven't taken time to subscribe to this channel yet, do yourself a favor and do that. You're not going to find better information, real, actual, practical advice on how to make money from online ads than you're going to find from this channel, because I spend 40 hours a week doing ad testing and strategy. Most of these guys on YouTube, they're not actually doing that. They're just spending all their time making their YouTube channel, so they don't have real firsthand knowledge. I also got a great resource on my site at guaranteedppc.com/blog. The blog that I have, I document the strategies that I have that work, so you should check that out as well. Audience signals. Yeah, they're really a good way to make PMax work better. That said, they're not a crutch in and itself. You should consider running standalone search and shopping and display and all those campaigns to try to get the most out of what you can from Google Ads, particularly when you're doing lead generation. But for e-commerce, this is a gold mine, and you should really take this seriously. And if you don't want to do all of it, try one thing I mentioned on my list here, see how well it works, and then go ahead and go, balls deep on the whole thing and do them all, because they're all going to contribute to a higher return on investment once you got them in place for your business. So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Thank you for watching. See ya. If you want to see another video, click here. It is one of my best ones.